So the irony doesn't escape me with all that's been going on the last 6 years. Okay, I came here to America in 1975, and yeah, this is the land of hopes and dreams. This is the land of the American dream. This is the land of innovation. This is the land of, yeah, MK Ultra, high stress, high stress. This is the land where we do forge new paths, and we did. And it was the people who were pioneers out of England, out of Europe. Okay, and then we had the Indians that were here, but they couldn't own this land forever. Everything goes through a change. So when people say, oh, this wasn't originally yours, nothing was originally ours. It's been borrowed and mutated and expounded upon. And if you can't share and evolve something, you have to own something from its original state, then how far back are you willing to go? And at what point do you say, well, we should give everything back to the Indians or give everything back to this population or that population? No, everything goes through a change. Everything does. And if the powers that be at the time of that innovation decide to bring everything back down to its prototype, then that's fine. The collective will deal with it. But America was built on innovation. America was built on the pioneers and the explorers, the ones that were willing to risk life and limb and reputation to do something different, to develop something different. And so, anything that is new and evolutionary is always going to be met with some kind of resistance. But see, I'm so lucky to be in the land of America because that's what we were built upon. But you know how the American dream and all of whatever that goes with the American dream has been subverted and used as a propaganda tool and used as a way to manipulate. And then people take on these personas that, oh yeah, I'm patriotic, I'm this and I'm that. But gosh, for darn it, you can't change, you can't be innovative, you can't be a pioneer. And I'm like, hold on a second. You are flying your American flag because of what we represented back in 1776. That change is always going to be inevitable. And pioneers are always going to be met with some kind of resistance. And so, some people are patriotic in name only. Some people are patriotic in symbols only, but they don't really understand what it means to be patriotic, what it means to be, un-American. Now, I can understand why some Canadians don't like Americans. Because Facebook comes out of America and they don't like their free speech. They're like, oh, I don't like the censorship, and they're in Canada. I'm like, okay. And Facebook is based out of Silicon Valley. Out of Harvard, Yale, whatever, at Harvard. And so we have Canadians that don't like Americans. We have some people in the UK that don't like the innovation of America. And they're willing to tell me through email, oh gosh, you're a monster, you're this, you're that, I'm going to go report you to all your authorities and this. And I'm just like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? I'm in the land of America where we have rules, we have laws. We also have room to grow and innovate. And sometimes we have to go outside the box to do that because the system won't allow you to be innovative because they're so rigid in the way they do things. And that means that's academia. And so you almost have to go outside of academia, outside of the associations and the cliques in order to be innovative. But even academic Americans forgot what it means to be an American. And I'm ashamed that people who were born here don't even understand what it means to be American. But I was brought here when I was 15 months old, and I understand what it means to be an American. It means being strong in the face of so much opposition and being a pioneer and not following in somebody else's footsteps. And so, yeah, I'm in uncharted territory with my dog. It's crazy, it's insane, but things change and I'm always adjusting. And so as long as she's peeing and she's pooping and she's eating, I just have to deal with whatever's going on, because once we figure out how long she has to deal with this condition that she's in, then people will realize that they can survive their cancers and their tumors without going under the knife and disfiguring themselves and causing trauma, of which then they're going to have to pay back later once they want to become whole again, when their life changes or when their priorities change. Because who's to say that what you think today is going to be the same thing that you're going to think 15 years from now? And so when I saw that article that Doreen Matos posted about a transgender child going through chemical castration, I was tripping out. Not that I'm tripping out on transgender. I can care less what people identify as. But the fact that we are so rigid in our constructs that when someone wants to wear a dress and they happen to be a male, when males don't usually wear dresses in our society, they actually go under some kind of chemical castration. They go under the knife in order to fit society's expectations to be something that they identify with. No, they couldn't just put on some pants or put on a dress and everyone's okay with that. No, they actually have to disfigure themselves in order to assimilate. That's how fucked so many things are in the medical holistic system. And then it gets politicized, and then people cause people to then give their kids to be experiments in the medical holistic system. And then they politicize it with using the LGBTQ community. And the LGBTQ community should be up in arms and upset over this type of thing, but no, they're embracing this. Not all of them. I can't speak for everyone, but I would think that somebody would get some sense in the LGBT community and be like, what the hell are we doing to our poor children? Because what happens when someone decides to think something different and doesn't want to have that or sustain that procedure that was done to them as a child? You know how much pain and suffering they're going to have to go through? Like, I'm watching my dog now. She's not in pain or what you think is suffering. She's just dealing with a hardship that I'm helping her out. I'm making sure that all of her needs are met on a 24-hour basis, because she has to deal with what the vet system did to disfigure her, because she had those reoccurring post-traumatic stress cysts. And you could see now you could see what they did to her, because it's right in your face. It is like an eye on her cyst. And that's where they probably continuously kept aspirating and draining her cyst. And you can't do that. You have to let the body go through that process and feed it. And who knows what kind of conditions are lurking and what you have to do to keep maintaining that. And so right now I'm watching the fallout, the punishment when someone goes to the medical holistic system under the knife or any kind of chemical alteration, because you want to fit into a very rigid, intolerant society. And that is the left and the right, not just the left or just the right. Oh, both sides are fucking intolerant. And they cause each other harm by forcing people psychologically to feel like they have to disfigure themselves in order to fit in. And that's even plastic surgery. So if you have anyone that does plastic surgery in your family, no, I'm not very impressed with what money they make on the backs of people disfiguring people so they can fit into an intolerant, superficial, materialistic, shallow society that we're in. And I'm ashamed that I am in that kind of society where we force our children and our friends and family to go under the knife and disfigure ourselves and our children in order to fit in. Because I'm dealing with the fallout right now. And when you experience the fallout from your practices in the medical holistic system, you will think differently. You will think differently about the medical holistic system on such a level that you wouldn't be promoting surgeries. You wouldn't be promoting your friends and their naturopathic, homeopathic, allopathic, homeopathic, any of that. You would be like, holy crap, I see what they've done to people. That's why they keep recommending cures and surgeries, because you never have to realize the punishment. And then they say, oh yeah, it's okay to die. Well, yeah, when you die, you don't really see what damage they've done to you because you're not around to actually witness it. You're like, holy. And so then people then pass this ideology onto their kids, and their kids disfigure themselves. Their friends and family disfigure themselves, and no one is the wiser because they keep dying and reproducing, passing along the same information, commodifying their whole genetic line, and then they're happy to pass away. People suffer in hospice. I was reading an article, or I think it's like, what is it? I don't know, Pray For Me or something, where this lady has dementia. She had brain cancer surgery, and she broke a hip, and she's on morphine because she's in so much pain, and now she's in hospice, and they can't wait to then, she can't, her caregiver, her daughter or whatever, can't wait to just have her just go, because she's suffering watching the torture of her mom or whoever go through what they're going through in the medical holistic system. And so that's why my gut knew everything about the medical holistic system was so opposite of what people think. That no, the holistic system is not any better. Your friends who are promoting all their naturopathic bullshit are no better than those in the allopathic. They just administer the same bullshit differently and market it differently. And so if you can't face the pain and realize you have to do something different, then you will be butchered by those two industries on so many levels. And I'm not willing to support that, which is why I don't contribute to GoFundMe accounts for people who are in massive amounts of pain. I'm sorry, you have enough people in your world that are willing to take you down. I'm not willing to contribute to that. And there's no guarantee that it's going to relieve your suffering. There is no guarantee. So I'm not willing to support Russian roulette. I'm not. And that does not win me a lot of friends, but I could give a shit less. At this point, it's easier to be alone than have to deal with people who are willing to compromise themselves and their friends and family. Instead of being a pioneer, which, yeah, most Americans are not pioneers. Oh, they like to talk about being a pioneer. Oh, yeah, America's such a great land. Oh, we're so patriotic. Everything's great. Yeah, right. You couldn't be a pioneer if it freaking hits you in the face. But it's fun to talk about being a pioneer. Oh, yeah, it's fun to talk about the great innovation of Christopher Columbus and 1776. Oh, yeah, we see all over InfoWars, all over, all the patriot sites. But they don't really understand what it means to be a patriot because they can't do anything different or new. They have to follow in someone else's footsteps. Every single ideology they took on in the patriot and the left-wing world, somebody else gave them that verbiage. They gave them their lifestyle, their belief systems, their religion, their politics, their scientific dogmas. They never freaking forged a goddamn thing in their whole freaking life. They just kept feeding off the backs of others. That's kind of like a parasitic entity, which what I'm dealing with right now with my dog. I'm dealing with her parasitic entity until somebody wins. It's either that parasite's going to fucking win or my dog and myself are going to win. And right now we're in the middle of the war. And it's a microbial war. And so, yeah, when you realize what the hell that you've been doing the last how many years in the medical holistic system, you will be so angry when you finally feel the repercussions of what your parents put you through as far as the medical system and what you put yourself through the medical and the holistic system. Once you feel the repercussions, you will be so angry. Oh my God. I'm angry right now because I have to deal with my dog going through this process. I mean, yeah, it would be easier to put her down. Believe me, my husband is having trouble with this, and I don't blame him. Because we were taught to only enjoy things for a very short amount of time, and then when it starts changing and having to go through an evolution, we then immediately put it down because we don't want it to suffer. My dog hasn't peed in her bed or in my bed in the last 2 weeks. She gets up, she looks at me, and she whines, and I help her up, and I help her outside. She walks around, pees, and then we go right back inside. That shows that there is still sugars in there, and she's intelligent. Like a person who has ALS that can't speak, but their brain is going, and they feel stuff, and they're thinking stuff, but they can't fucking speak. That's what we have developed. We've developed a jail in people's bodies through the medical holistic system because of the torture of the surgeries, of all the innovation that isn't supported correctly with food and dealing with opening up both sides of the system. And so we have put people in the jails of their body, and then we go like, well, I guess it's time to put somebody down, whether it's in hospice, morphine, or a veterinarian, because we can't handle the repercussions of our actions. And so when someone says, oh, you can't get an abortion because you have to be responsible for your choices in life. Well, what about you living through all your pain, being responsible for the choices in your life, Mr. Right-wing, Mrs. Right-wing pro-lifer? What about you being accountable for the choices you made for your children and deal with them who are acting out because of what you have done with ADD and ADHD and Ritalin and drugging your children? What about you taking accountability? Oh no, it's convenient to selectively choose what you want to be held accountable for, but no, if it means that you have to be held accountable for all your stuff, no, that doesn't apply to you. It only applies to whatever is convenient because of their politics, religion, or scientific dogmas. And so, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So yeah, I'm just a little perturbed. And when you suffer through this type of evolution, because yes, evolution is suffering, especially when you're paying back to the sins, paying the sins of the father and everything, paying back the sins of the father. It just opens your eyes wider and wider, and then you realize that people don't know what they believe because they were given their belief system. They know what they believe because that's based upon what someone gave them. It was never really, they never really understood it for what it really was. It's easier to go out there and gather and be all in your campaigns of this or that because you have nothing else going on. But it's much difficult to realize what truly is going on because you've never been held accountable for your reaction. Once you're held accountable for your actions in the past and in the present, you'll get out of the politics and the religions and the scientific dogmas. You'll get out of all of that. You will leave the war because you have your own war to fight within. And I left the war a long time ago. I had to understand all sides of the story. So yeah, I had to take on both sides, all sides. But once you actually are held accountable for your, and deal with the repercussions, you will stop being manipulated by your friends, your family, your politics, your religion, and your scientific dogmas. And so I think I was justified being like, I think you need to question your religion. Oh, absolutely, I'm justified. Because a lot of those who are right-wing Christians who claim to be patriotic will never look at being held accountable for their part in the medical holistic system. And so they'll never really understand what it means to actually be a pioneer, which is the foundation of America. And so, yeah, we have people who take America for granted. Abso-fucking-lutely. Oh, but they'll fly their flag. They'll fly their colors. Oh, yeah. All about the Second Amendment. But someone gave you that argument. Someone manipulated you into those arguments so you lose sight of what it actually means to be a patriot, to be a pioneer, to be an American, to be an innovator. And so I wasn't born here, but I fucking understand what it means to be an American. And I don't have to fly the flags and the colors of patriotism. I'm exhibiting it. I am living it every single fucking day. What it means to be an American. I'm getting flack from Canadians. I'm getting flack from people in the UK. I'm getting flack from people all over the freaking world. Even from my own people here in America. I'm getting flack. And I am American citizen. I was naturalized in 1980 something. Or maybe it was 1970 something. 1980. And so those that were born here, you take this shit for granted. It's those that come here from war-torn nations understand, I guess, what America is. It means you got to be a pioneer when the situation presents itself. And it's okay to ruffle your feathers of your friends and family on Facebook. That's the whole point of being American, is you ruffle feathers. You forge new paths to your family, to your friends, to the people that you respect the most. And if you can't do that, then what does it mean to be a fucking American? What does it mean? Oh, it doesn't mean shit. It just means in name only. You're American in name only, and that's it. You want to have all the creature comforts, but you don't want to do any of the fucking work. And sometimes the work is having to be that countering voice, to be that black sheep, right? And so when I have English people and Scottish people act more American than the American people in America, that pisses me off. When I actually have people in England like John and Audrey who are willing to put shit on their Facebook and ruffle the feathers, and they're not even American, they're from Europe, which means people who came to America originally were from Europe. And the Americans that are born here, they take this shit for granted. But the Europeans understand what it means to be an American more than the freaking Americans know how to be. And that says a lot. That says that a lot of Americans have taken their life for granted, which is why we're in a great reset. And you're going to see California go through some shit, because I was watching a meteorologist blog site on YouTube, Ryan Hall, and he's saying, yeah, California, and then of course even the Northeast, because we're going to get the residual stuff, they're going to be going through some major atmospheric rivers, major floods, major storms. Yeah, we're getting our asses handed to us. Some of us. I guess luckily I left California because I was done with that innovation, that pseudo innovation, contrived innovation on some level. I mean, there is and it isn't. There's controlled innovation. And then here I am in an not a controlled circumstance, but I am. And I am re-establishing what it means to be American. And I wasn't even born here. I'm not even first. I'm a first generation. Yeah, I guess I'm a first generation. No, I'm not. I don't know what you call me. I'd have to go and Google it. First, second generation. Let me Google that. First generation immigrant. What does that mean? Because I don't know what that means. The foreign-born family members go to gain citizenship. Okay, so I'm a first-generation immigrant. I don't have any kids, so there won't be any second generation. But we have a lot of second-generation immigrants, third generation, fourth generation, who take America for granted, and they're all on my nuts for forging a new path. Oh, but my dog is suffering. The dog suffered when she went through those countless traumatic surgeries over and over and over again, of which you've done to your animal too, Mr. and Mrs. I have to go and say something about what you're doing. And so, yeah, so that's why it's ironic that somebody in England and somebody in Scotland understood what it means to be an American, who's willing to ruffle the feathers on their Facebook, who's willing to, oh my God. So all of you other Americans in the JJ world, what's up with your situation? What's up with why you haven't said anything to ruffle feathers on your Facebook? I'm sure, I know you're in your occupations. But I guess if your occupation and your standing in your community is more important than being an innovator and being a pioneer, then you're like everybody else who's only willing to pick and choose what they want to forge their paths in, or pick and choose whatever, I don't know. And so, yeah, I was correct in acknowledging Audrey and John. And I didn't even actually see that, as I didn't look at it that way when I did it. But now I see it, and it's crazy. It's crazy. But it's not. It just says a whole lot about Americans today, that it takes Europeans, people in the UK, to realize this stuff. And I'm just like, holy shit. Wow. And so, yeah, when I'm dealing with my dog, And I'm watching my husband suffer through watching this because he just doesn't understand. And I feel for the guy because he's a hunter fisherman. You know, when he sees something suffering, he just shoots it. As far as hunting, like deer or fish or anything else. I'm not doing that. But that's the mentality of a hunter fisherman. And so I understand it. So yeah, so when I'm sitting here trying to deal with my dog and she licks my nose and she looks at me and she depends upon me. And I'm thinking so much stuff, and I'm so pissed off at those that have something to fucking say who hasn't done anything in their life worth doing except to go to work and have a religion and then go and protest the government but do nothing to change society but want to blame everyone. And I'm just like pissed in my head. What the hell are these people thinking? What kind of American are you? In name only. Oh, but you couldn't exhibit actually being an American, thinking and innovating and being a pioneer and doing anything other than what someone else has forged for you. I mean, you wouldn't be this activist against chemtrails or GMO if it wasn't for Alex Jones. And where did Alex Jones get it? Where did he come from? Oh, but you don't want to think about that. No, you just want to follow in the footsteps of some influencer on YouTube or Sirius Satellite or whatever, you know, band.com. And so, yeah, that was a major revelation this morning. And that came from the suffering of me having to deal with having to take care of my dog because of what someone else did to her in the veterinary system. I know they didn't know any better. But that is being held accountable. She is being held accountable for the sins of the father. I'm being held accountable for the collective out there that I supported as far as the veterinary system, the surgery system. I almost went and got a hysterectomy because I was suffering so much 6 years ago. Thank God I didn't, because if I want to become whole again, it would be extremely painful, and who knows what kind of demon I would have to face after that kind of surgery. And so I thank my lucky stars I didn't have health insurance at that time. See, those who have health insurance are screwed. Because when you're paying $20 or 20% as a copay or whatever, or if you have really good insurance, you're screwed. So I'm so glad I only paid $300 a month for about 6 months when I was in college, and I was only trying to deal with my PMDD with Prozac for a month and then be recommended to go to counseling to deal with my depression. And then I said, you know what, this is stupid. The Prozac ain't gonna do shit, and it's taking away my life force. So, you know, I'd rather just suffer through this and deal with the fluctuations than be drugged and then yeah. And so when I was working at that one call center for life insurance here in Ohio, and I'm trying to beat everybody at their game, you know, with calling people and making all this money, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should go get a hysterectomy because my PMS came back again. Well, it was always there, but it was pretty aggressive because I was aggressive at work, so it was aggressive evolution. Thank God I didn't have insurance at the time. I was still in my 30-day period, but I was still calling in sick. And so they're like, yeah, we're not going to have you because you're not reliable. And you know what? That was the best thing me quitting was the best thing because it wasn't going to last. And if I would have stayed there and then powered through it, and then go get the surgery, oh, I'd be screwed. I would have been screwed. Yeah. The JJ world wouldn't have come out of that. So there's a reason for everything, guys. There's a reason for everything. And you got to stick around long enough to understand the reasons and the repercussions. And people that don't stick around long enough, they rather pass away than deal with the repercussions of their choices. And I don't blame them because it's painful. It's freaking painful. And so pioneers and explorers don't have the luxury to follow in someone else's footsteps. Every step they take, every move they make, uncharted territory. Not everybody can be an explorer or a pioneer, but they also built America. The American dream is not to be greedy. It is to forge new paths. And I think most Americans lost sight of what it means to be an American, which is why we're in a great reset, which is why your genetic line will be going out the window in climate change. And some of you are okay with that, and that's fine, because you were bred to be the human experimentation. and so were your children, and it will be realized. And so being patriotic is not just loving your country. It's understanding what your country was built on. It was built on the backs of men and women who explored the West and fought the wars. And I've been fighting the wars ever since 2016. The virtual wars, the slams on me, all the critics, even the so-called Americans in MIT with high-level degrees were slamming someone who was innovated, who represented the American dream, who was an immigrant, who didn't take her country for granted. But no, they're too greedy and wanted to line their own coffers to understand what it means to be an American. And some of them aren't even American. They came out of India. And they're on BuzzFeed, Newsweek, Daily Mail, Pathos. Ashamed at all of you. So you can make all your money and make fun of us. So we fought the wars for you so you can make all your money and make fun of us or be an armchair quarterback. It's so easy to cast judgment from the safety of your own homogenized tunnel vision home. But you do not have to do the hard work. Someone else did it for you and gave you the path to follow with something to expect. And so, yeah, I don't have any path to follow. I don't have anyone ahead of me telling me that how long I have to deal with this cyst or how long I'm going to have to help my dog the way I'm helping her. I have nothing to go on, which means I guess I'm a pioneer and you guys are going to have to, you're going to get the luxury of me finding out what's going to happen. So as long as I keep feeding my dog and keep pooping her and helping her outside to go pee and letting her rest and carry her if I need to, you guys will get the luxury to find out. But as you know, I dealt with my lipoma and I pulled out all my old programming and I'm able to forge new paths and write books and deal with the controversy. So I've already exhibited that I can survive all of my predisposed issues, but I didn't have any surgery. So those who had surgeries, you're going to have to deal with the things that were surgically taken out and who knows what kind of growth you're going to have to deal with. The demons, what you're going to have to deal with from that. But you're seeing how my dog is now dealing with the demons that she is dealing with from the surgeries. And so that's kind of an indicator of what you're going to have to deal with, those of you who have gone under the knife many times. And if you've gone under the knife or gotten injections for Botox or anything else, well, Botox more than the V's. Because I've had all my vaccines in the military and I haven't really had anything come up as far as boils from it. But when you have something surgically taken out, yeah, you might be dealing with some demons you're going to have to carry around with you. That could be this big growth on the side of wherever you had the surgery, and you're going to have to look a little Island of Dr. Moreau-ish. And so when you explore new terrain to develop a new society, there will always be resistance to assimilation from both sides. And so, yeah, the thing with the poor kid that's going to be going through chemical castration, I feel for that child because it may be in the future. Because the mother was the one that was supporting this. The father was like, holy shit. And that mother is putting that kid through some hell. Because what happens in 15 years when that kid decides to change or decides that that wasn't what he wanted, but he was goaded into it by an authority figure? You know what kind of hell that poor kid's going to go through? That adult's going to go through? And who knows? Well, we all can kind of know. Some people do themselves in because they can't handle the stress. Physiologically, intellectually, psychologically. And so I said, yikes, poor kid. I could care less of the identification, but the extreme physical alterations will mess the child up and the adult in the future. And how will this affect his adulthood or her adulthood? What if we accepted identifying as the opposite gender without going through medical trauma? I've seen people on my Facebook who went through medical trauma for transitioning from being a female to a male or vice versa. I forget which. And now they're dealing with multiple infections and growths from where they had the surgery in this climate change. That's what you are facing when you undergo that kind of trauma. And people won't survive it because the pain is too great. And I've watched them on my Facebook, basically are on their deathbeds, still talking about their surgery and what they've done and how grateful they were or are to be able to express their sexual identity. And they are suffering from multiple infections from those surgeries. in this climate change. That's how messed up the world is. And so what if we accepted identifying as the opposite gender without going through medical trauma? Our intolerance to diversity has caused us to disfigure and butcher our children and ourselves. And so, yeah, when you give your kid to the medical system to get the tonsils taken out, well, not only have you taken away part of their immune system, but now if they want to become whole again in the future, when they're like 19 and they see my information, they will have to go through that trauma again. And who knows what will happen during that time. And so you force them to then have to pass away when their body can't handle the pain of growth, of coming back online. So our rigid constructs cause so much unneeded pain and suffering that people are willing to go under the knife to put their children under then chemically alter and disfigure their future, just because he wants to wear a dress. And I say he because that was the original construct, and he wants to identify as the opposite, and that's fine, she. The child is beautiful with pants or a dress. No reason to go through voluntary medical trauma. Have we taken sexual identity so far that we're willing to destroy ourselves in the name of it? Destroy our children? But we are in a great reset, and everyone is expendable, obviously. So what if 10, 15 years in the future, the person changes and they don't want any more of that chemical castration? What kind of unneeded suffering will happen in the future? Oh, but parents don't think about that shit. They're just exploiting their children for some kind of political cause because their kid is expendable. They can give a shit what happens to that kid in the future. It's all about now, now, now. And hey, I want to be in the paper and to be a pioneer at the expense of this child. Why don't you be a pioneer for yourself and see if you can go through that kind of reassignment surgery and survive it? What if society changed in the future and people didn't have to alter themselves going under that much trauma to please society? I don't care what an adult does, but I really feel sorry for the children and the animals. Because I didn't do this to my fucking dog. Though people want to say, oh, Jill, you caused that. Okay. Maybe the person could transition correctly if they could support the process with all food and dealing with the pain and symptoms. Because just like, the viruses or people's DNA, or also the medications like hormone replacement therapy, that's basically Hydra viruses that have a programming. And that programming, when you are one programming and then you're uploading another program, there has to be a transition point and assimilation. That is symptoms. That's evolution. That's, mucus. That's headaches. That's pain in different areas. That's pulling out the feces. And once you do that, would you then look like a specific entity that is more female? Potentially. I mean, I have an open system, but I have a predominant programming that I still identify as hetero. I still look female in some cases, though if you shave my head and I wore men's clothes, I could probably pass off as a male. But I have longer hair and my voice is, well, it's a little bit low, but it sounds female. But yeah, if I took more hormones that were more testosterone, then I could potentially sound like a male. And if I really wanted to become a male, then I'd take all the hormones and pull out the old programming and become a male and go through the symptoms. And yeah, a person could probably transition and stay transitioned without being destroyed or go through so much suffering. But you have to suffer no matter what. But would the suffering be so long? Well, it wouldn't have to be if you understood how to support it. But people don't. They don't even know how to support their own suffering without going through that kind of trauma of reassignment surgery. And so, the body can basically assimilate to anything if it's supported correctly. But what we're doing is we're forcing transitions that are unsupported, and then people suffer, and then they suffer infection, and then they get the diseases that they can't come back from, and then they're on painkillers, and then they end up in hospice and they pass away. And what was it all for? Just because you want to please your society? or please your mom and dad. And so maybe the person could transition correctly if they could support the process with all food and dealing with the pain and the symptoms. But you know how people are. They're willing to die for their beliefs. They're not willing to address it correctly with all food and go through the trauma of transitioning and evolving and pulling the fecal programming. So side effects aren't bad. Just like when you get a V, okay, those side effects are you taking on that information and assimilating to it. And then your body also has its own primary autoantigen or self-antigen that will assimilate to some of the programming and release the demon so it doesn't work against you. And then you have then successfully assimilated to whatever innovation that was in the V's. But people don't even know how to deal with, their assimilation to other people, or even the foreign bacteria in their body that was trapped in there because of their medical holistic practices. And then they were in a very specific algorithm that kept things kind of status quo until the environment changed. And now they have to deal with all the foreign bacteria and the body trying to release. And they keep trying to trap it in, and then they succumb to the overcapacity, being over innovated, and they don't survive heart attack, strokes, and they get sepsis and septicemia and all that stuff. So side effects aren't bad if you understand how to manage them, but people don't even manage the issues they have today without destroying themselves, much less handle side effects from a voluntary alteration to their genome. And that same thing is getting the V's too. If you don't understand how to deal with what you have inside, then yeah, getting a V is just going to compound the issue anyways, but people don't think that way. But once you open your system and you understand how to deal with symptoms and understand pulling out the programming and eating all food, then you can get a V and it's not going to do any damage to you because you already figured out how to open your system, release the demons. And so those with an open system can handle anything. So as long as the environment supports life. But you can handle all the therapies, you can handle all the food supply, you can handle all the climate changes, because you know what to do. So chemical castration is also called medical castration or hormone therapy. And so in my opinion, sexual orientation is a type of colony-forming unit hydra that must be supported effectively with food and dealing with the symptoms and actively taking out the old fecal programming. So when I said in my book that, yeah, when you have trapped hydra that are conflicting with each other and they're all fornicating, and some of them might be homogenous, some of them might be heterogeneous, and then if there's so much homogenous or heterogeneous, then that will then be your association, your identification. And so that's why some people are heterogeneous or heterosexual, some people are homosexual, and some people are, and then we have also then the social constructs to bring into play, and then people's rigidity and the positive and negative reinforcement for what you say, what you do, what you look like. And so we have all those things to factor in on why people do or do not do, or survive or do not survive their belief systems. And so there's so many factors to deal with when it comes to this. And so that's why the term or the word diversity was coined, because there's so much to factor in. So much. So both nature and nurture come into play when it comes to actual sexual orientation. You can have an open system and have both nature and nurture, or you can have a closed system and it's nature along with nurture. Because I had a closed system and, I was raised in a heterosexual household and I identify as heterosexual. I mean, I'm married to an opposite sex. And so there is nature and nurture along with that. But I have an open system now and I'm still identifying as hetero. So when we open our system, anything is possible. However, I have an open system. I still subscribe to the nurture side of me, whatever was originally programmed into me as far as sexual orientation. And I still identify as hetero. And I'm tolerant of all the homogenized people. Homo. And so that's why you rethink going under the knife for anything. My animal is paying for the sins of the father. I am paying for what others did before me to my dog. And I'm willing to suffer through it. My dog is just trying to survive and she wants to live. And again, she has not peed in her bed or my bed for the last 2 weeks. And so if you already have been under the knife, it's no big deal as long as you're willing to deal with the repercussions. And payback is a bitch. And so, yeah, If you are a patriot and you've gone under the knife, you can forge a new path and show people that you can survive having everything come back, but this time you support it differently. And you suffer through the trauma of your choices, of your parents' choices. Because the reason why you had cancer is because you were taught that anything that happens in different parts of your body, you go and use medical holistic system, in which your parents did the same thing too, and your parents' parents did the same thing too, until somebody breaks that generational curse. And it takes just one person to do that. And some people won't. And so their whole genetic line will be gone out the window. So can trauma cause cysts? Absolutely. A post-traumatic cyst is a rare complication of significant soft tissue trauma. It occurs at the junction between the subcutaneous fat and underlying fascia, when a large subcutaneous hematoma fails to resolve, developing into a chronic fluid-filled cyst lined with fibrous tissue. And that's exactly what my dog is dealing with. And so I understand pain for the sins of the father because I'm experiencing it right now. And some of you might experience that too. Not all of you, but some of you might. And so again, when you go under the knife for anything, you will pay back the piper. And it will be traumatic. And people will look at you differently because you're going to have to carry that growth around for however long you need to. So I got to go. My dog has to pee. Bye.